Hi everyone, welcome to our SIGUX webinar where we're going to be talking about status updates. Shawn, Plummer, and Laurie Fox are on the phone, or at least doing the webinar, and they're going to be telling us all about their communication system. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand during the webinar, and as I'll be helping facilitate, we'll just go ahead and I'll let Laurie and Shawn know that there's a question in the audience. So thanks so much, and I hope you enjoy the presentation. It's all you, Shawn.
Okay, well actually Laurie's going to talk first. Hello everyone to this wonderful Tuesday. Shawn, you can go ahead and advance a slide. We'll put our pictures up. Our department just unveiled a new website and we got new headshots, so I always am happy for a chance to show these off. I recently took a new position here at Geneseo. I'm the Assistant Director and Manager for Educational Technology. And Shawn also has had a promotion since you saw him last. He's a manager of our systems group. So this is who's talking to you today. We're going to talk to you a bit about how we communicate with our campus when we have emergencies, planned outages also. Geneseo is located in Western New York. We are rapidly approaching the most beautiful time of year, and that's fall. We have about 5,000 students here on campus and about 1,000 faculty and staff. Like I said, we're located in Western New York. We're part of the State University of New York system, SUNY system. And we're going to talk to you today about how we monitor our systems and the system that we use to notify the campus of outages. So Shawn, you want to go ahead and start talking about system monitoring?
Sure do. So system monitoring typically is the role of your systems and networking group, I suppose. It's all the pretty lights we monitor every day. We used to have a system called Big Brother. It looked like this. We had lots of greens, and reds, and purples, and blues. This was our old system, and the problems that I saw with it and that we were experiencing with it were that most of the service hosts were inscrutable to anyone but us. Some of them were inscrutable to me, actually. If they weren't a system I directly was responsible for, I wasn't quite sure what was running on that host. And what it meant if that host was down. And so about a little over 2 years ago now, we looked to replace this system with something that could be more service-based, more user-friendly, display more usable information to the campus. The product we moved to is called OpsView. And what it let us do is we still have a lot of that deep systems level monitoring, but this is a screen we can present to our users, our customers, and to our frontline support people. And this just goes by a service level and checks on all the various services that we provide and provides meaningful names to them. These are the things that our customers know the services by, like NightWeb or Google Services, Banner Database. Those are meaningful to people. And the service checks that we test here aren't anything that could possibly go wrong with those systems. What we've tried to do is narrow these OK green boxes to only show warnings and critical statuses if the service is, or if the problem is service impacting. Behind the scenes, what I might be seeing could look something like this. There are many systems that are red that have critical warnings, but none of those are service impacting errors. They're things that my team, my systems and networking team might need to know about, might need to address, but users don't need to know, and it isn't meaningful to users that those are critical because they don't impact the service. So ideally, this screen for our customers will only show critical or warning statuses when the service is impacted for customers. And that was a goal of the new system. And I guess that's that covers the new system. We called it Monitor. It's publicly available, and our frontline support people can also drill in further and see more detail if they need to. When we have service problems is when we get to posting status messages to the campus community.
Okay, and I do want to mention that all of the photography that Shawn and I are using in our presentation was taken by our very talented campus photographer. We just love the work that he does. He posts a photo of the day. It's really a pleasure to have him on our campus and be able to show off some of his work. So this is the second piece of what we did when we improved our communication to the campus, and that is to put in a new status system, a status posting system. And our system is based on a WordPress installation. Shawn, you want to go to the next slide? Shawn and I are not in the same room, so it's really hard for me to kick him to go to the next slide. But this is what our WordPress installation looks like. We have been running it for, man, well over a year now. We are using several plugins with WordPress. We have a custom field template. We get custom field values. We also use HipChat by Atlassian in our department for internal communication, which I'll talk a little bit more about. That really comes into play during emergencies. We have a plugin that posts statuses to our HipChat instance. We use iFrame, Subscribe to, and WordPress to Twitter. Shawn and I are going to post our presentation on the SIGUX webpage, so you don't have to take a lot of notes. We also, we did a paper on this last year at the SIGUX conference, and that's available in the SIGUX paper repository. So you can also get all of the information about our WordPress installation there.
Laurie, I have a quick question from the audience.
Yeah.
Question from Jacqueline. Do you have any idea how many people outside your department are accessing the system dashboard?
Well, Shawn, can we go look at this live for a minute, Shawn?
Yeah, this screen.
Yep, Ops View.
Yeah,
and
I actually don't know what our access is like for that as far as external customers, non-departmental people accessing that page.
Well, actually,
really have a good report
if you go to our homepage, Shawn, it's on the new CIT homepage.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to show.
That's true. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you just hold on 1 minute. When we put up our redesigned CIT homepage, we added a scaled down version of Monitor. It's over here on the right. So you'll see that we put our most important systems on this page. And I do know that when people notice that something is not good, they will reach out to us and say, did you know? So I feel like with this system and the way that it's set up with plain English words of our systems, people will have a more likelihood that they'll take a look at this, especially if it's not green. It kind of draws your eye to it.
Yeah, and we've tried to refine those checks over time so that we get fewer false positives and more. Sometimes if it's green and the service is down, we'll look at a way if we can possibly run some sort of test against the system that will reveal that as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, Shawn, you want to take me back to the presentation here? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, these are some examples of real statuses. And this is kind of our rules for when you post a status. The first one is to be brief. You'll see here that this is a pretty good status of some configuration changes we've got coming up. It's written very clearly and it's nice and brief. It's not, too long, didn't read. And in the next one, there is absolutely no detail. BANApp 10 and BANApp 11 are restarted. I don't even know what those services are. That doesn't mean anything to our customers. So you want to be sure to give enough details so that your customers see what's going on. And then in the next one, we gave too much detail here. So it is something that we continually work on with some of our staff to help them see what really is the right balance of information to give to the campus. This next one gave me quite a heart attack. It was sent out in the middle of the day, and the subject is wide area network outage. And I was out of my office, and the status messages come to my cell phone, and I thought, holy cow, I need to rush back to my office because the help desk must be going crazy. But then as I read more into this status, you can see that we're scheduling a circuit outage that's happening between 2 and 5 o'clock in the morning. So this makes a really good story, and it got my blood pressure up a little bit. But we have worked that when something is an upcoming outage, to change the subject so that you don't alarm people by what you put in a status. This next one is another good example of a status where we kept it pretty simple. This is an upcoming maintenance happening on our virtual lab. So you can see right in the subject, you can see that the outage is not the day that it was posted, it's in the future, and we're going to reboot it at 6 a.m. and it's going to be unavailable for just a little bit of time. So keeping it simple is important. And here's another important feature, and that is to let people know when you're going to post again. We're starting to look at problems here that last more than just a few minutes. So this was an outage that we had with our web server where we did not really know how long the outage was going to be. So we picked a standard time. For us, it's usually 30 minutes where we like to communicate back to the campus, where we say, we know there's an issue, we don't know what the cause is, we're going to update you again within 30 minutes. And this brings into play our communication timeline. When we have an outage that is going to be, that's not resolved and we don't know when it's going to be resolved, we actually establish a communication schedule and we stick to that schedule. For me, I actually set a timer on my phone so that I don't get caught up and forget to post again. Because if you don't post again, it's like a black hole and they think you're just drinking beer in the server room, which has never happened on our campus as far as I know.
Well, those raised floors are pretty good for keeping it cool. So.
That is a good point. That is a good point. So we do like to use the communication timeline. So to summarize our rules that we use for posting a status message, you want to be specific about what is impacted and when it's impacted. You want to be sure to put it in simple language and not use a lot of acronyms or server names that people might not recognize and know if something impacts them or not. You want to always put the most important information first. I try to think of it like a little mini press release where I want to get right out there. If people only read the first line, they should know what's happening. And you want to be respectful to your users and also your frontline staff. That's been something that I've really worked on with the systems and networking group, with Shawn's group, is to say, hey, you're not just sending a status to our customers. Your frontline staff need to know what's happening and what's coming next.
Yeah, and well, and to expand on that for our staff, the better we do communicating that status to our frontline staff, the less we'll be pestered for more information or what's going on or that sort of thing while we're trying to work on that outage as well. So that's really important. And I'll also, as far as the keeping things simple, if you do want to include additional technical details, or often when I'm updating some of our software, I'll post release notes. I just put that later in the status message that if people are interested, they'll continue reading and follow that link or do whatever, but definitely keeping it simple in the early part of the message is key.
Okay, so Shawn's going to talk about communication during an outage.
Right, so our status system we use for planned and unplanned things, and we've found that having some established procedures for unplanned outages, for incidents, what to do during an outage can be extremely helpful. Not all outages are created equal, so a lot of this may not apply during short outages that are minimal fixes and a small number of users are impacted. But parts of it can be useful for almost any outage. So in the initial stages of an outage, the first thing you need to figure out is it an outage? What's the scope? What's the impact? How many users are impacted? Somebody just told me they can't log in, but maybe it's their computer. I don't know yet. And so usually this can take anywhere from a few minutes to 15 minutes to properly assess the scope of an impact to know even what to post. And that can be a pretty stressful time. I don't have a good hard rule of thumb as to how quickly you should post a status. It kind of depends on the problem and what you're seeing. You know, sometimes it's very obvious that there have been 20 calls to the help desk already in the past 5 minutes, the service is down, and you don't need to do a whole lot of investigation to figure out it's down. But sometimes you'll just get a report here or there of somebody having a problem and you can't really tell. So you need to, I wouldn't wait any longer generally than 15 to 20 minutes if you know there is some sort of problem to post something. And if you can't determine the scope and impact and duration immediately, you should still post something and not wait to get all that information. Once you've posted that there is an incident, there is an outage, there is some sort of problem, then we move into more of the fixing the problem. And depending on the scope of the outage and the size, some of this will change. But you're going to have 2 to 3 basic roles for this. You're going to have the people fixing the problem, and then you need to appoint someone who's going to be the incident commander who will be in charge of managing that outage. And they may also have an incident communication liaison, someone that handles the actual communication to the campus via all the various channels that your department can communicate with campus via. So the incident commander's job is to track what's being done, stay on top of it, note the things that may need to be undone or revisited in the post-mortem, and handle getting more resources for a problem. Oftentimes the person working on the problem is working as hard as they can just to figure out what's even wrong. They don't have time to get in touch with other people that they may need help from or note some of the things they're changing. They need to report those things, and the incident commander needs to keep track of them for later. And the incident commander needs to be aware of what's being tried so that multiple people aren't stepping on each other's toes. They need to communicate in simple, plain language the scope of the outage, when the communication will occur next, as we talked about before, and can also help to communicate some of the specific steps that are being tried to fix the problem. They need to be on top of monitoring the next communication time and be ready to post a status update, which may involve them asking the people working on the problem, hey, can you give me just a couple sentences of what you've been working on for the past 20 to 25 minutes? And then they can evaluate if they want to include that in the status or just simply post that the service is still down and we're continuing to work on it. But that way the person working on the problem doesn't have to think of that, doesn't have to interrupt what they're doing to try and synthesize what their communication to the campus could be. It's a very different skill set than what you're trying to do when you're working hard to fix a problem. The incident commander and communication liaison need to be available to answer questions about the outage from the campus community, from other managers and your CIO or whoever else is interested in this outage and needs a quick update about what the problem is. Maybe they came in and it's been down for 30 minutes, and the incident commander provides that high overview, what the problem is, what we've tried, where we're going, what our next steps are, so that the people working on the problem can continue to do that. And the people working on the problem only need to communicate with the incident commander. They won't get interrupted by the CIO coming in and asking what's wrong, and then the manager of information systems coming in and asking what's wrong, and then maybe one of the help desk support people calling up and saying, hey, what's going on? They don't have to worry about that. The incident commander will also gather feedback from the community about new developments, share it with the people working on the outage. Maybe they'll say, hey, you guys are working on this one problem with NightWeb, but we're getting reports that people can't access these systems from off campus via Twitter or some other channel, which may be extremely valuable in troubleshooting the problem. By default, the incident commander is also the person that first starts working on the outage. For smaller, short-lived outages, that may be okay. For outages that are not a quick fix, you really need to get someone to be the incident commander, to be in charge of that role, to handle it over the long term while the problem is being fixed. So that's the basic roles for an incident. And a lot of this is taken from some of those links there that I have on that slide. So kind of a timeline for a longer outage, kind of how we loosely do things. The first thing that I like to do for my team is to move everything, all of our communication, to a shared chat room. We use HipChat internally here. You could use Slack, maybe you use Microsoft Link or something like that. But the shared chat room works very well for posting what you're doing. Anyone can see it that's in that shared chat room. The incident commander can collect the information together from that. People can scroll back and see what was said, what's been worked on. They often support mentioning people, so it's easy to send a quick push notification or text message to someone to ask them to come in and look at their system or get their expertise on a problem. You can, the incident commander could also use their other tools you could use as well. They could create a shared Google Doc where you're documenting the changes you're making. There are possible, you may find ways to mitigate the problem, and you'd want to record those so that you can share them with your frontline staff so they can give workarounds out to people that are calling in with the problem. Basically, whatever ways you can get to communicate the various stages of the outage, possible ways to mitigate it, and the solution. Whatever you're using for communication, it's excellent if that also can be your documentation medium. Because after the outage, what you want to do is your post-incident cleanup and your post-incident follow-up. And you need to know what you did to know how to undo it if it's a temporary fix, or what maybe you could do better in the future to not have this problem or to handle this problem better in the future. And that's what your incident commander should organize post-incident, is what cleanup actions need to be taken, what's our follow-up, what's our incident resolution going to be for this. So basically, to summarize, the information flow is we get the burden of communication off the people fixing it. Another option could be a ticket in your ticketing system where all parties are subscribed. I think that shared chat channel is probably one of the best things for rapid communication and documentation of what's happened during an outage, HipChat or Slack. And hopefully that will also serve as your documentation medium. And so now we'll move on to informing the campus how to get that information out.
Sure, this is me again. So let's go ahead right to the next page, Shawn, and we'll talk about some tips for better communication. The first one is in our WordPress system, we have automatically subscribed select users to our status system. Obviously, it includes all of our technical staff and all of our student employees. One of the things that I find is that by subscribing our student employees, they actually become somewhat of ambassadors for us even when they're not on duty because they get the notices as soon as something is broken. So that's been fantastic. And we actually have several people outside of our department. I think we're up, well, several being 20 to 25, but that's better than what we've had in the past. And we do find that people who frequently call us when there's an outage or a perceived outage, I tend to recommend that they subscribe to our WordPress system so that they can get notifications. We also, when we communicate with department chairs and secretaries about things happening on campus, we always encourage them to subscribe to the status system or to follow us on Twitter or Facebook so that they receive updates during outages. Our WordPress system automatically posts to Twitter, and for bigger things we will go put things on Facebook as well. We find at Geneseo that Facebook really isn't used as much. I know that many people on campus are on it, but they're not using it for work type things, and they're probably not on it at all during the day. That's a little bit of sarcasm. Right. We also, when we have an outage, we search for mentions of our service that are impacted to be able to respond to mentions on social media. Of course, we're always searching for mentions of our college name. We, one morning early, had a problem with our class registration system, and I started to watch on Twitter for things like registration, and that was a mistake because many colleges were having issues with registration that morning. So sometimes it's hard to find where people mention it. We also engage our customers via Twitter and email when there are problems, and we'll give them links to either our status postings or to monitor. So Shawn, if you want to go to the next page, that shows just a couple of quick examples. These are two customers that quite frequently use Twitter to contact with us. On the left, someone was having problems connecting to the internet in one of our buildings. And it was just her computer. But when I saw her mention, I was able to right away get back in touch with her and say, hey, look, our internet connection's fine. You know, are you having specific problems? But this also shows this user that she can go take a look herself if she wants an instant answer and we're not here. And then over on the right, Ray was having some problems loading videos. And I can't remember exactly how that transpired. It actually did turn out to be a problem on our network. So you can see that I first tried the soft touch with Ray to say, well, we look okay, we might be congested, and he said, nope, this is something specific. So I was able to immediately let our networking staff know, and we were able to work on the problem. So about a year ago, we had a pretty traumatic event on campus, and it was an emergency drill. I don't know if your college has ever done them, but we did an emergency preparedness drill where the scenario that they presented was that a truck carrying fuel crashed into our building. And it crashed into the entrance where Shawn and I walk into work every day, and it was very close to our machine room. And in this scenario, one of the guys in our department, his office was right near where the truck hit, and they pretended that he was hurt. So they said to him, okay, this is the drill, you're hurt, we're taking you away and hiding you so that people can't contact you, and on your way out, could you unplug something? Could you break something? Could you make something happen? So he unplugged our network core, and I think I can hear your collective gasps across the country, because what started out as a drill turned out to be a very real large emergency for us. The fire alarm went off in our building, and we were all evacuated, and we were outside saying, oh, isn't this great? We have this drill. Our building was impacted. Let's go to Starbucks and hang out. Well, then we started to look at our phones and our laptops that we grabbed with us and noticed that, hey, wireless networking is down, and hey, all of our systems are really going down. So we implemented our emergency procedures, and we set up we were like a little nomad band of IT people. We set up in another building that used to have a machine room in it, and we started to look at what was going on campus, because what started out as a drill turned out to be 3 hours of a very real, very big problem that we did not anticipate. Since all of our network was down, that brought down all of our phones as well. And this was an area where Shawn and I really pulled into practice our communication plan. And we had a few of our networking staff working on it. Of course, we weren't all together because our network systems and networking director was injured and missing. And we started to think about how are we going to communicate with the campus. I mean, thank goodness for cell phones. We were able to tweet and Facebook, but we weren't able to do anything with email. And we weren't able to call departments. So we established a plan, and we actually physically walked around campus to notify people. Then we called the CIO and said, we need to figure out what's going on, and we got permission to speak to our fake injured party, and we got things back up and running. But that was really the best test of our system, and really what solidified our commitment to it here at Geneseo. Although if you were to ask us, how does this all work for us? Well, the truth of the matter is some days it doesn't work that great. And when Shawn and I were reflecting on why doesn't it work that great, it came down to the roles and the having someone who is going to be incident commander or an incident communication liaison is so important to keep the communication going. We have fantastic employees here, all of whom, when there is an emergency, they will buckle down and get to fixing the problem. But they forget that they need to keep the campus informed and the rest of us in the department informed of how fixing the problem is working. So we continually have to remind each other here in the department that someone does need to step up and be the commander, and we need to take the burden of communication away from people working on the problem to be sure that we remember to keep our customers informed and more importantly, to keep each other informed of how the emergency is going. Shawn, is there anything else you want to add to how it's working for us?
No, I think that really covers it closely. I mean, it's not that any of us don't want to communicate what's going on, but when you're working on the problem, communication tends to be one of the first things that falls by the wayside for people, I think. So yeah, just the roles are very important. And it can be challenging. One of our challenges specifically, too, is when outages occur, especially off hours. Often it's only one person who's on call, and how do they bring in someone to help them with communication? To who are they supposed to call in, and who else will be inconvenienced off hours with this outage? Those are questions that I think we're still dealing with. So.
Laurie and Shawn, just a quick question. Debbie's wondering, do you have a regular emergency drill? And if so, is the day and time random, or is it announced in advance?
We shy away from drills. We do not currently plan a specific drill for our department. The campus is doing more drills, and I think that we are going to be doing more, what are they called, tabletop?
Yeah,
hopefully
next
tabletop
summer
exercises.
we're supposed to be doing a tabletop disaster recovery scenario, but we don't currently do a regularly scheduled.
I mean, I would say we pull this into play enough in real life that we don't need to stress ourselves with any more drills.
We do have another question. I'm just wondering if you could show an example of HipChat.
Yeah.
So HipChat is a product that's by Atlassian, who are the same people that do Confluence Wiki. And we've been using this over a year too, right, Shawn?
Yeah, more like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. It has a web-based component. It also has applications for Windows, Mac, Linux even, and iOS, Android. It's basically a shared chat room and direct message system. We've already signed up everyone in our department here, so it's like Instant Messenger, but it's also, let me see here, I have this room. Yeah. And everyone's already in there though, and so you don't need to know anyone's username in advance. Some of the nice features of it are app mentions, so I can start typing someone's name, and then it would send a message to that person and beep on their screen if the app's open. If it's not open, it would send them an email and a push notification if they have the app installed to tell them that I've asked them something. I could create a new room and invite specific people to it with new chat. I could create a new room here to talk about a specific thing. We have some standing rooms you see here, like related to various projects or internal groups. And then I also can search and send text messages to individual users. I mean, that's the basics of it. It also allows you to search the history. I believe there's a free tier, which only allows a certain amount of searching, and then the paid-for tier, which is $2 per user per month, allows unlimited searching, I believe. So you can actually search back through rooms' histories to see what was said about a certain topic, or scroll back infinitely. It integrates with various tools. Here we have our WordPress blog post status messages to this room. We have this, any change in our wiki page actually gets posted here. if you wanted to monitor that. It integrates with Jira, so as issues get worked on for identity management, for example, Jira posts status updates to this room, and then you could discuss them right here. I think that's kind of the overview of the features for HipChat. Slack is very similar, and has similar features. They have things called bots too, which you can write programs to integrate with your various systems to ask that bot to get you an image or to post something for you. It integrates with a lot of third-party services, PagerDuty, things like that. So.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? I'm just chuckling because I think it'd be fun to get everybody together and just talk about all our war stories when it comes to crisis management.
Oh my goodness. Sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's not funny.
Yeah, it's only funny after the fact, right? When you can debrief and have it, be able to figure out what happened and why it happened.
Right.
I don't see any questions coming in, and I think we're close to our time. So I do want to thank Laurie and Shawn, both of you, for sharing these great ideas and all this information. For those of you who are attending, I know Laurie and Shawn are great resources, so you can feel free to follow up with them. We have recorded this webinar, and it will be available on the SIGUX website. And I'll just put a quick plug in. Our annual conference is coming up in November in St. Petersburg, Florida. So don't be shy, get in and register. With that, thank you all so much. And we are working on planning our next webinar in October. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.